talked about ethics in some fashion or another, and they said, I think every one of them alluded to the fact or explicitly said ethics are important, right? And do you think, for example, do you think that their ethics had anything to do with their professional success? I do. I think you should too. And do you think that the ethics by which we do business in Chicago has anything to do with the 18% annual compound growth rate in the business we do in Chicago? You think ethics had anything to do with that? I do. I think you should too. All right? One of the things that I consider in my research at IIT a lot is that ethics is changing in light of automation. And the gentleman here just from FIRD 58, boy, did he hit the ball out of the park, right? The ethics of the industry are changing, and there's a couple of different ways to respond to the ethics. One is through regulation, and certainly the SEC, the CFTC, FINRA, and the self-regulatory organizations have their own regulatory or compliance angle on regulation in the age of automation, high-frequency trading. As the gentleman before me also mentioned, though, that it's really better if the industry takes stock of its own business, have personal ethics, have organizational ethics, and have industry-wide ethics. Going to be a far cry better than really prescriptive regulation based upon regulators who may or may not be up to speed with the pace of innovation. Unfortunately, the innovation is always ahead of, things change every 6 months in technology. They change every 4 or 5 years in regulation. So the regulation is always going to be behind the innovation. It's just the way it goes. So it's better if we have, I think, or at least an important part is to have industry-wide self-regulation, and the way we sort of embed our own ethics into our own self-regulation is through standards. And so there are engineering standards in the world. If you work for Boeing, there are engineering standards. You've seen them design the new 787 plane, run it through its paces with all kinds of crazy tests for 6 months before it's allowed to take off. Right? Those are all standardized tests that they have. They're not regulated. It's part of the quality engineering. And that's what we're seeing the industry respond with self-organization and best practices. So we see the Futures Industry Association, you see the Professional Traders Group, you see the organization that I'm involved with, which is AT 9000, developing standards of how we run our business. And in terms of branding, we've branded this project AT 9000. What's the product we're branding? Well, I think what we're branding is the liquidity that ethical markets can provide, so that we can go out to the world and trade internationally by saying, these are the ethics, these are the engineering standards that we're all going to live by when building and operating our automated trading systems. And I think, personally, I think this is a good way to go, lest somebody get it wrong. I was going to say, unless we get it wrong, and unfortunately, by we, I mean they. And just to get people thinking for just a second, recently there's been some stories of people getting fined for market manipulation. Market manipulation has long been prohibited in the financial industry, but now the definition has changed. As recently as last summer, the SEC and the CFTC changed what the definition of market manipulation was. Before, they actually had to prove you did it on purpose. Now it can either simply be you did it on purpose, or you were just reckless. You were irresponsible. You built a crappy trading system. It was unsafe. Went haywire. You pushed the market. Now you're guilty of market manipulation. Well, how would you defend yourself in the case of a market manipulation? Well, one way to defend yourself would be to say, well, I followed the industry-defined standard. I'm AT 9000 certified. I did the right thing, right? You're never going to have someone, the gentleman from TT mentioned earlier, you can't write code that doesn't have bugs. It's not possible. It's part of the project, okay? But were you responsible in development and control of your code, right? That's really what AT 9000 is all about, is how can we define what it means to not be reckless in the design and development of our trading systems. If you flip that coin over the other way, and I think we can all agree sort of on that definition, one of the other side of the coin is you did it on purpose. You manipulated the market and you did it on purpose, right? And I think what's particularly scary, and I think what's really getting wrong, actually, is that then you say, well, what's the definition of manipulation? Well, take spoofing, for example. You're putting fake bids and offers out into the market, and that's actually attempting to deceive other market participants. To which I respond, well, of course you're trying to deceive market participants. This is a competitive marketplace. Deception is part of competition, right? As much as it is in sports, as it is in trading, it's a competitive business. Deception is part. You can't tell Derrick Rose or LeBron James he's not allowed to fake out an opponent. It's just the nature of competition. And if you can't compete, you lose. Success is not guaranteed. What's the problem here? This is my perspective. Okay? But what happens then? Well, it gets better for all of us because people then build better systems that are less gullible to deception, which seems to me to be better for everybody. Trading systems that are less gullible are less likely to crash, less likely to go haywire, going to operate in control, and that gets rid of the other problem, which is these trading systems go haywire. So by having a market full of trading systems that are of high quality, that are less susceptible to being deceived by real or fake volume in the market, the end result is higher quality systems running our markets. There's going to be a natural evolution, the survival of the fittest, right? Which in the end means deception, in terms of spoofing, goes away because it doesn't work anymore, right? Nobody's fooled by those easy games. What other kinds of deception are there in markets? Well, take iceberging. What is iceberging? Does anybody know what iceberging is? Iceberging is, I need to buy 1 million shares of IBM, but if I put in an order for IBM for 1 million shares, it's going to drive the price up, right? So what I do is, I just drip it in, little 100 shares at a time. 1,000 shares here, 1,000 shares there. After a couple of days, nobody notices. I bought my 1 million shares without having a significant market impact. This is called iceberging. Common practice, everybody does it. Is it deceptive? Absolutely it's deceptive, right? Price is determined by supply and demand. My demand is 1 million shares. Do I show that demand to the market? No. I deceive the market as to my true intentions. Then that must create a false price, right? Because then the current price in the market doesn't reflect true demand, supply and demand, right? Isn't that deception? Of course it is. Okay? Now the iceberging argument is just what we call a straw man, simply to call your attention to the fact that the opportunity is there to use these definition of deception to marginalize certain groups of traders we don't like. Okay? This, I think, is a very slippery regulatory slope. Because if you marginalize a particular group of market participants, that gives you justification for regulating them differently, for treating them differently, maybe for just getting rid of them altogether, right? And then you don't have a free market anymore, do you? And so the AT 9000 project is an attempt to define an ISO 9000, a quality management system standard for the automated trading business. It's the only way to provide an industry-wide culture of building high-quality systems that would enable or facilitate international trade, because the firms are trading around the world in real time. Too many jurisdictions, too many SROs, you're trading in many, many different countries, no harmonization with respect to regulations. The French have a different idea than the Americans, than the Germans, than the British, than the Japanese. The way to foster global harmonization of regulation is through an industry-wide standard. Other industries have done this. This is why you don't worry about flying to Germany or anywhere else in the world, because there are international standards. right? And so this is the AT9000 project that we're working on, is an attempt to provide a credible, ethical mechanism for evolving the industry ethics at the same time or concurrently with innovation. Okay? So, and we're doing this all right here in Chicago. Thank you very much.